The air was thick with tension, the kind that clings to your skin before a storm. It was just past sunset in a quiet Atlanta suburb when Captain Jada Monroe spotted something off. A hooded man sprinting down a narrow alleyway, clutching a woman's purse. The woman screamed faintly in the distance, her voice drowned by the noise of traffic and the fading daylight. Jada didn't hesitate. She might have been off duty, wearing civilian clothes, but her instincts as a decorated military officer kicked in like second nature. She slammed her car into park, kicked open the door, and chased the man down without a second thought. Jada was a force. Tall, sharp-eyed, confident. A black woman who had served 3 tours overseas, led teams into danger zones, and never once backed down from a threat. But tonight she wasn't facing an enemy behind enemy lines. She was on American soil, her home, and the real threat was still hiding in plain sight. As she closed in on the thief, her combat boots pounding against the asphalt, the scene changed in an instant. A police cruiser screeched around the corner, lights flashing, siren blaring. The officers inside had received a vague call about a suspicious individual running, and when they pulled up, all they saw was a black woman chasing a white man. No one stopped to ask questions. No one asked who she was. Before Jada could raise her hands or shout an explanation, she was surrounded. "Hands in the air, now!" one officer barked, his gun already drawn. Jada slowed, confused, breathless. "I'm military. I'm stopping a thief. He has—" "Don't move!" another officer shouted, eyes wide with panic or prejudice. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. The man with the purse had vanished into the shadows. Jada froze, her hands instinctively lifting halfway. She wore her ID badge around her neck, but the glare of the headlights made everything chaotic. One wrong move, one misunderstood gesture. That's all it took. And then the shot rang out. Not loud at first, but sharp, cutting through the thick tension like a blade. Jada staggered. The world tilted. She dropped to her knees, one hand clutching her side as blood began to soak through her shirt. The pain came next, followed by a bitter kind of disbelief. After everything she'd faced overseas, after all she had survived. This is what it came to? The officers froze too, their panic replaced by something more dangerous. Denial. A scramble of words over their radios, a rush to take control of the narrative before the truth could catch up. And on the sidewalk just a few blocks away, 17-year-old Marcus Tillman had seen it all. He had just stepped off the bus after visiting his grandmother when he spotted the commotion. He knew Jada. She lived a few doors down from his aunt. He'd seen her in uniform, seen her mow her lawn, seen her smile at his little sister like family. Now she was bleeding and no one was helping her. But this isn't just Jada's story, or Marcus's. It's about what happens when bias speaks louder than facts, when a decorated officer gets treated like a criminal because of the color of her skin, when a teenager raised to be respectful and kind sees the world for what it is, for the first time, raw and unfair. And yet something happens that no one expects. Hours later, across town, Marcus was still shaken when he found himself on a crowded city bus. He hadn't told anyone what he saw, not yet. He kept replaying it, over and over in his mind, unsure how to process it. That's when a visibly pregnant white woman boarded the bus. The seats were full. No one moved. Eyes stayed glued to screens. Backs turned. But Marcus, despite everything, despite the fear, the rage, the growing sense that kindness sometimes "Doesn't matter, stood up, ma'am," he said, voice low but firm. "You can have my seat." She looked surprised. Not just by the offer, but by the way he said it. Like it wasn't a favor, like it was a duty. She sat, thanked him, then paused. Her eyes lingered on him with curiosity. Something in her gaze softened, and when she reached into her purse and handed him a folded note before getting off a few stops later, he didn't think much of it. Just a thank you, probably. Maybe a scripture verse. Something simple. But when Marcus finally opened the note hours later, alone in his room, what he read nearly made him drop it. It wasn't a thank you. It was an offer. A life-changing one. One that would tie him to Jada Monroe in ways he couldn't yet understand. One that would ripple across the city and expose a truth too big to bury. But to understand how a quiet act of kindness led to that, and how that note uncovered a cover-up that nearly destroyed lives, we need to go back. Before the shot, before the chase, before the bus ride. Back to the beginning, when everything seemed ordinary. Until it wasn't. And nothing. Not the uniforms, not the medals, not even the truth, could protect them from what was coming next, because the system was about to be exposed. And Marcus was holding the key. The note trembled in Marcus's hands as he read it again, the words dancing under the light of his bedroom lamp. It was written in neat cursive, like someone who took their time. But it wasn't just the handwriting that caught him. It was what it said. If you're the young man who gave up his seat today, please call this number. I believe your future is bigger than you know. Below it was a name, Dr. Helen Langford, and a phone number with a DC area code. Marcus stared at it, unsure what it meant. Who was she? Why did she think he was special? And how could she know anything about his future? He set the note down and leaned back against the wall, his mind still echoing with the image of Captain Jada Monroe on the ground, blood seeping into the concrete. He hadn't told his mom. He didn't know how. He wasn't even sure the police had reported the truth. On the news, they said an unidentified suspect was injured during a chaotic pursuit. No mention of Jada, no mention of her being military, and definitely no mention of the white man she was chasing. The whole thing didn't sit right. Marcus wasn't some street kid. He was respectful, smart, and quiet. He kept to himself, helped out at church, and played basketball when he could. But that night had changed something in him. He felt like a thread had been pulled, unraveling a part of the world he thought was stitched together with justice and fairness. He picked up the note again, tempted to call. But fear crept in. What if it was a mistake? What if he was just imagining? All this meaning behind a simple thank you? He slid the note into his wallet, deciding to think on it. For now, he had school in the morning, and his mom had already asked him twice if he was okay. He didn't want her worrying. Meanwhile, in a small hospital on the city's south side, Captain Jada Monroe lay unconscious. She had lost a lot of blood before the ambulance even arrived. The officers who had fired the shot, Officers Brenner and McKean, were now under administrative review. But word around the precinct was that it would all blow over soon. Just a misunderstanding, they said. No one had expected her to survive, and to be honest, part of them wished she hadn't. Because if she woke up, she would talk. And what she had seen, what she had tried to stop, would become a problem. Jada's military record was impeccable. She had served in Afghanistan, worked in intelligence, and was currently assigned to a task force focused on urban crime. She had been following that purse snatcher for weeks, not for petty theft, but because he was tied to something much larger. A trafficking ring, drugs, maybe even dirty cops. That night, she hadn't just chased a thief. She'd been seconds away from catching the one person who could expose the entire operation, but instead, she ended up in a hospital bed, the target of a mistaken identity shooting that conveniently erased everything she'd been working on. But not everyone had forgotten. Detective Carla Hughes had known Jada since their academy. Days. They had served together briefly before Jada transferred to the military. Carla had always admired her. Sharp, brave, the kind of woman who never backed down, even when it was hard. When Carla heard about the shooting, something didn't add up. The reports were vague, the body cam footage conveniently missing, and the witnesses silent, except for one name. A teenage boy, Marcus Tillman. He hadn't come forward, but his name was in a report, just barely mentioned as someone who may have been in the area. Carla's instincts flared. She pulled his school records, his address, and his photo. A quiet kid, clean record, no known gang ties. Raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs, she decided to pay him a visit. Not in uniform, just to talk. The next afternoon, Marcus was walking home from school when he noticed a woman sitting on the hood of a dusty gray sedan parked near his building. She was in plain clothes, but something about the way she carried herself made him pause. "Marcus Tillman?" she asked, standing up slowly. "Yeah," he said, cautious. "I'm Carla, Detective Carla Hughes. I wanted to ask you something. You got a second?" He hesitated. "Am I in trouble?" She smiled gently. "No, son, not at all. I think you saw something important, and I think someone tried to make sure nobody else would." Marcus looked down, at his shoes, then back at her. "You mean Jada Monroe?" Carla nodded. "You knew her?" "She lives near my aunt. I saw the whole thing. Can you tell me what happened?" He looked around nervously. "Can we go somewhere else?" They ended up sitting at a nearby diner, tucked into a corner booth. Marcus told her everything. How Jada had chased the man, how the police rolled up without warning, how she tried to explain, how they shot her anyway. Carla listened quietly, her jaw tightening with every word. "You said she was chasing a man. Did you see where he went?" Marcus shook his head. "He cut through the alley. I lost him." Carla jotted a few notes, but she already knew this wasn't random. Jada had been working on something deep. She just didn't know what yet. When she dropped Marcus off, she handed him a card. "If anyone asks you to keep quiet or if something doesn't feel right, you call me, anytime, day or night." He nodded. "Okay." That night, Marcus pulled out the note again. Dr. Helen Langford. He grabbed his phone. His heart pounded. Then, finally, he dialed. It rang twice. "Hello?" Calm voice answered. "Hi, my name is Marcus Tillman. I think you gave me a note." There was a pause on the line. "Marcus, I'm so glad you called. I've been hoping you would." "Why? What's this about?" "I think you saw something, and I think you're braver than you realize. I want to help you. But first, I need to tell you something about Captain Jada Monroe." Marcus held his breath. "What about her?" "She wasn't chasing a thief. She was chasing a federal informant, someone we've been trying to locate for months. And now, he's gone." Marcus's mouth went dry. Why would she be chasing someone like that? "Because she was working with us, Homeland Security. She was undercover, and whoever shot her—" Helen paused. They didn't want her to talk. Marcus sat there, the phone pressed to his ear, his mind racing. The note in his wallet wasn't just a thank you. It was a doorway, and now he was standing on the edge of something bigger than he ever imagined. But one thing was clear. Whatever this was, it wasn't over, not even close. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, the phone still pressed to his ear, even after the line went silent. His thoughts were a storm. Homeland Security, undercover, federal informant. He had expected a thank you, maybe a scholarship offer or something like that. But this, it felt like he had stepped into a world where nothing was as it seemed, where people like Jada were targets instead of heroes, and where one act of kindness could somehow land him in the middle of something dangerous. He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jada's face twisted in pain. He heard the gunshot again, sharp and sudden, and then the sirens. He kept wondering, if he hadn't been there, would she have been left to die in that alley? Across town, in a dimly lit conference room, Dr. Helen Langford sat at the head of a long table, her fingers steepled in front of her. Two other agents sat quietly, flipping through a file labeled Monroe J. Inside were classified reports, intelligence notes, photographs, and surveillance logs. One agent, a younger man with a crew cut, looked up. "Do you think the kid is reliable?" he asked. Helen didn't look up. "He's honest, he saw what happened, and more importantly, he doesn't know how to lie about it." "What if he talks?" She looked up, her eyes sharp. "That's exactly what I want him to do, just not to the wrong people." Helen wasn't just a policy advisor. She was one of the lead coordinators for a joint task force focused on exposing corruption within law enforcement. Jada had been her point of contact inside the local PD, working to gather evidence on officers suspected of covering for traffickers and violent offenders. The man she chased that night wasn't just a purse snatcher. He was a courier. He carried sensitive documents, names, details, connections, and now he was gone. So was the evidence. What Helen feared most was that someone inside the department tipped him off and possibly even ordered the shot that brought Jada down. Back in his neighborhood, Marcus tried to go about his day like normal. School, chores, dinner with his mom. But nothing felt normal anymore. He kept thinking about what Dr. Langford had told him. He didn't even know what to do with that information. Should he tell his mom? The police? What if they were part of the problem? What if talking to the wrong person made him a target too? Detective Carla Hughes was having similar thoughts. After hearing Marcus's story, she had started pulling old case files, reports Jada had submitted over the last 6 months. The paperwork looked clean on the surface, but something felt off. Too many cases had been marked inconclusive. Too many names redacted. When she tried to request additional records, she hit an unexpected wall. Access denied. That had never happened before. She visited the hospital again that night. Jada was still unconscious, hooked up to machines, a steady beeping marking her heartbeat. Carla sat beside her quietly. "I don't know what you found," she said softly, "but I'm going to figure it out, I promise." Meanwhile, in the precinct's back offices, Officers Brenner and McKean sat in a private meeting with their union rep and a superior officer. They looked nervous but defiant. "The investigation is moving slow," the rep said, tapping the table. "But I've spoken to Internal Affairs. As long as you stick to the statement, you'll walk." Brenner leaned forward. "And the kid? What if he says something?" The rep smirked. "He's a kid. He doesn't have a badge. He doesn't have credibility. And if he does start talking, we've got options." McKean didn't speak, but his jaw tightened. He remembered the shot. He remembered Jada falling, and something about it didn't sit right, even now. Outside the precinct, a different kind of tension was building. A local journalist, Maria Jensen, had caught wind of a shooting involving an off-duty military officer. The official statements were full of holes. No clear name, no motive, no timeline. And the neighborhood had gone quiet too quickly. Maria had been chasing police misconduct stories for years, but this one felt different. She had a source at the hospital, someone who whispered the name Captain Monroe when no one else would. That same source had seen a plainclothes detective, Carla Hughes, visiting more than once. Maria began digging, and the more she found, the more questions she had. Why had the officer been shot without warning? Why was the body cam footage lost? And who was this teenage boy who witnessed everything? She didn't know Marcus yet, but she was about to. That same day, Marcus was called into the school counselor's office. At first, he thought it was about grades. But as soon as he walked in, he saw 2 people sitting beside the counselor, a man and a woman he didn't recognize. They were polite, professional, and vague. "We're from a youth outreach program," the woman said with a smile. "Just checking in with students who may have witnessed something traumatic." Marcus tensed. No one should have known he was there. He hadn't told anyone. Only Carla. Only Dr. Langford. He sat quietly, nodding. Through their questions, answering as little as possible. Something about the way the man kept glancing at his phone made him nervous. When the meeting ended, Marcus walked out of the office but didn't head back to class. He went straight to the front doors and left. He texted Carla. Someone talked. "I think someone's watching me," she called him within minutes. "Don't go home, meet me at the library, I'll be there in 20. Marcus turned his hoodie up and walked fast, heart pounding. He felt like eyes were on him, and maybe they were. Because at the other end of the parking lot, sitting in a nondescript black sedan, a man was watching. He held a photo of Marcus on his dashboard, and he wasn't smiling. Back in D.C., Dr. Langford received a secure message, a code name, an alert. Their asset, Jada, had been compromised. The courier was still missing. The note she had given Marcus wasn't just a thank you, it was a test. To see if he could be trusted, to see if he was ready. And now, ready or not, he was in. The game had begun. But the rules, They were written by people who played dirty and killed clean.